Hello. Hello, hello, welcome.
Hi.
Hi, Michael. How are you doing?
No, thank you. Fine. And you?
I'm good, thank you. Where are you calling in from?
From Dresden, Germany.
Oh, nice. So it's morning there, I guess.
Yeah. Where are you?
Currently in Nepal.
In Nepal?
Yes. Yeah, in
Ah,
Kathmandu.
cool. Amazing. I've been there like 20 years, no, 15 years ago, but I love the country. But after you've seen the Himalaya mountains, you cannot embrace the Alp mountains anymore. That was my experience because they think they're small and tiny.
Yes, they are beautiful to behold. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hi, Tomas. Hi, Blandine. I saw your message in the chat. How are you doing?
Great, great. Looking
It's good.
forward.
Where are you calling from?
Hungary
Ah,
from yes,
awesome.
yeah. Will you come to the in-person SIPS?
No, unfortunately not. No, I was hoping to make it, but yeah, my travel plans have changed for the year, so just the online session. Yeah, it's a real shame. Would love to go. I haven't been to Budapest yet either, so I was kind of looking
Oh,
for that.
well, it's a nice city. Yeah. The political situation is pretty hot right now, but otherwise, it's a great place to be.
Right. I don't think I've been following the political situation.
We have a completely fascist government, and and yeah, it's so there is now a larger opposition party that seems to like win in the in the polls, or well, and but we will have the elections next year, so now the whole system gets more and more radical, and like Russian like laws are like uh, are going into effect, and the media is becoming tougher. So it's kind of
Right.
uh, tense right now. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that.
Hopefully, the new party will be able to overtake the government next year. I don't know.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah. Um, yeah, we can only hope, I guess. And hopefully, yeah, we can hope and try to build a better system that can disrupt that mess.
Yeah.
That's my hope and intention. Hi, everyone. Hi, Veronica. Hi, Jasmine. Welcome. I'm so curious, like
Hi,
who,
thank you.
oh, you're there. Hi, welcome. Feel free to, yeah, chime in and let us know where you're calling from, or type it in the chat if you prefer. But yeah, I was curious if anyone saw the lightning talk I gave yesterday. Just wondering if I should recap the main points, or so we got one no from Michael.
I haven't.
Okay, that's 2 out of 2 no's. Got 100% no. It's okay. It's just whether I go over the kind of, high level overview again. I think probably sounds like I should. So maybe I'll kick off with that, and if people keep streaming, then that's okay. I'll have people got the landing page. I'll put that in the chat. So that's got some links. Yeah, it's got the links to the prototype we'll use today. So just a high-level overview of what we're going to do. Basically, I'll start with like a recap of the lightning talk, and I'll keep it relatively quick, maybe 5 minutes or something. And then we're going to go through a live implementation of this system that we're developing. So we've developed it across a number of different communities. We've done it at conferences before, but never an online conference. So this would be our first online conference prototype. And then at the end, basically, it will produce a range of scores for the contributions that we've evaluated, and that could be a discussion point. So we'll kind of round up and have a chat about the process and see what people think, and then I can give a bit of an outline of what's next for the project. So I'll share screen and give a little presentation. Is that showing now? I should see a very bright orange slide. Is that coming through? Yep, okay, cool. So yeah, hi, I'm Cooper, representing the Open Heart Mind project and community. We started this as a citizen science community, and it's since evolved into a charity in Australia. Our main mission is to develop this mechanism that we're calling Metavaluation, and its origins were intended as a disruptive model for academia, but it's now since evolved to become a general purpose solution for valuing basically any contribution to any community. And the premise was based on, I guess I have fairly, sorry for the plane in the background. My motivation is a revolution. I want to see an open science revolution, and I feel like we can tap around the edges all we want, but the current models that we're using are fundamentally broken at their core. And so I align with thinkers like Buckminster Fuller, who would say that you don't change things by fighting the existing reality, you change them by building a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. And so this is our goal with this project, is to develop an open scientific system that can quantify the collective value of literally any contribution with respect to that community's values and goals. Because if we can figure out the percentage of value that people create towards a particular mission, then we can reward them directly and then incentivize them to just keep on providing value to the community. Now, there's a tricky part to this that most models don't really speak about, and that is that evaluations are necessary for this kind of model to work. But most models treat evaluations, especially current peer review models, treat evaluations as voluntary contributions where there's no direct reward. And this, I believe, is an error. I think we need to actually directly reward evaluations, recognize the value that they create, so that we can incentivize people to keep giving high quality evaluations. But this raises a problem, because if we're going to evaluate contributions, then people need to evaluate the evaluations, and you end up with this problem of infinite recursion. And so the model I'll present includes a feedback loop to overcome this problem, or at least take a big step towards solving it, while remaining experimentally rigorous, flexible to very diverse types of contributions, and really, really simple so that it can be inclusive to the entire population of people, whether they're different stakeholders. Like in academia, we have researchers, funders, publishers, all the different stakeholders. Basically, the model is intended to be super simple so that everyone can participate and be directly rewarded for doing so. And so this is the mechanism. We're calling it Metavaluation. It's based on pairwise comparisons. So this is just simply giving someone two contributions and asking them to tell you which is more valuable on some dimension of interest. The tricky thing that we do is we expand the set of contributions to include these valuations themselves. And we then embed those valuations into the same process. So this gives rise to meta-valuation, because we're valuing these evaluations. And so in this, it's the exact same interface. You've got two items being compared. On the left, you've got one, which is this piece of code that somebody's written. And on the right, you've got some number of these pairwise comparisons. And so in this example, we're asking someone to compare the, I guess, energetic input of doing 100 of these valuations and compare that to a piece of code that somebody's written. Now, the important thing is that because this is a really standard process, we can treat it as a standard unit of value to the community, and we can use that to then peg the value of all other contributions. And so this you can think of as decentralized autonomous valuation. And I'll show you a real use case where we did this for another conference, which was a live conference called AMOS in Australia. And then I'll show you some of the other data that we've collected across other prototypes to kind of ground this in reality. So for this prototype, we asked people to nominate different contributions. They nominated things like the talks that people gave, the money that people paid, the administration work that people did behind the scenes. And we also invited them to nominate dimensions that we would then rate these contributions on. And so the experimental design is experimentally controlled. We balance all of the comparisons so that every contribution is compared the exact same number of times. And we simply just give someone 2 contributions at a time and ask them to tell us on which dimension is that which contribution is more important on that dimension. And so here in this example, you can see that we were asking someone to compare a lightning talk versus a hackathon, and the person just goes through and chooses A or B for each of these dimensions of interest. Now, all of that's just pairwise comparisons. That's nothing new. The novel part of what we're doing is this meta-valuation process. So this is where we then take, I guess, buckets or batches of these pairwise valuations and include them in the valuation process. And so everything, again, is fully balanced. Here you can see now that we're asking somebody to compare a lightning talk against some 100 of these pairwise valuations. And so again, it's fully balanced. People do all of these comparisons, and this gives us a data set that we can then use to calculate the score for every single contribution. So this is the chart showing how we do that. It's pretty simple. The blue dots are just the number of votes that these meta contributions or these review contributions have received. We fit this blue line to just fit a function like a exponential function to that data. And we use that function to then interpolate a score for all of the other contributions. So those are the black dots that you can see there. And I'm just showing the process there for gratitude, but we can obviously do this across as many dimensions as we want to. And what this gives rise to then is this multidimensional representation of the unique strengths and weaknesses of each contribution. And importantly, this entire value mapping has been produced through this very simple process that every single person in the community can participate with with a very small amount of time and without like a high level of cognition or understanding of the project required. And so from there, we can do all kinds of interesting things. We can calculate the gratitude or the value across each person's contributions. We can calculate the kind of net gratitude. So we can find out those people that have really given orders of magnitude above their fair share. And we can potentially directly reward them if there's money available or if there's tickets to the next conference, whatever kind of reward mechanism the community wants to explore, they can start to highlight those people that are really giving to their community. We can also look at reputations. So the idea we're working with is that reputation equals value over time. And so if we're tracking value contributed in particular categories like sectors of research, then we could figure out who are those people who are experts, and we could start to defer to them in decision-making in the future. We could also potentially reward particular categories. Say, this project, if somebody liked this project and they wanted to fund it, we have data where somebody could drop $1,000 in, and then that could be automatically distributed between those contributors to the project. And of course, the question that people ask is always about how do we ensure the integrity of the system? Well, the cool thing about having this transparent data set is that we can interrogate it to check whether people are doing this task well. And so this is just a proof of concept for that idea. There's definitely more sophisticated ways we can do it. But in this study, we had test retest. So sometimes the same person compared A versus B and then B versus A. And so we can look at their reliability across these repeated measures. And we can see that some people are more reliable than other people. And this might be indicating that their reviews are more valuable to the community because it's suggesting that they're actually spending more time and thinking through this process and doing it in a way that's valuable to the community. And so then this slide is just showing that the intention for this is for it to just be a beginning, right? Like what this mechanism allows is it incentivizes people to provide data to the system, but we can then evolve it over time in response to research we conduct. And so what I'm showing with this slide is some what you might call meta research, where we're looking at the energetic inputs and outputs for a particular contribution. and comparing basically the gratitude for some contribution versus the gratitude for the money that it took to put that contribution on. And in some cases, we can see that there's a surplus of value created. In other places, there's a deficit, suggesting that maybe it wasn't a great decision to do that thing, or maybe we're just missing some of the story. And so this is an invitation to the community to reflect on their processes and figure out better ways to do it in the next iteration of this cycle. And so this then is the idea that this is like a constantly evolving iterative framework where the community is moving through each of these stages where they're recording contributions, reviewing contributions, assigning a value to each of those contributions, rewarding contributors, developing these reputation profiles, and then conducting research to reflect on the overall process so that they can improve it and iterate it over time. And as a proof of concept of that, this is exactly what we've been doing the last couple of years. We've moved through different prototypes, through different communities. We started with our own community where we were hosting participatory, you might think of them as open science festivals, but they were very diverse spaces where people could offer well-being workshops, scientific talks, art, basically you name it. And then we took that model and we applied it to the AMOS conference. We learned a lot more. We embedded those learnings into these more recent prototypes, which have been working with decentralized communities around the world. And each stage we've iterated on the design. And at each stage, we've also valued the iterations as part of the process. So we've assigned a value to the prototype that we've adopted from the previous community, showing that we can create this kind of gratitude chain, where it's a much more efficient and rigorous way to work out the value that different people or different communities have created to this project or to other projects that adopt this system, and allows a more transparent way to track that value than, say, for example, citations, which is the current standard in academia. And the other really important point that we've learned through this process is that if one of the dimensions that we measure is referencing the mission of the community as the like North Star that we're trying to work towards, then firstly, it gives a really objective point for the community to value contributions with respect to that goal. But secondly, it allows cross-community coordination. So if two communities, let's say SIPS and AMOS or another open science organization, have a similar enough North Star that we think we're all heading towards that same direction, like an open science future, then they could basically value their contributions with respect to their own mission. And each community might decide or agree that their missions are sufficiently aligned, that their metrics that they generate could be exchanged and become interoperable. And this then sets the stage for coordination across communities to each take steps towards their common goal and recognize the value that they're each providing to each other and towards that common mission. So yeah, this is a thank you slide to the many, many people who have contributed to these various prototypes. Especially want to thank our developers because we are in the process of now developing an open source app, and I'm beyond grateful because these are amazing humans that are doing this completely like out of their own generosity of their own hearts. We're currently very basically unfunded, but we have a little bit of funding that we're going to drop into this system once we have our app ready. And so our app is most likely going to be ready in a month or two. And our goal is basically to use this app to plan and coordinate a fully decentralized gathering at the end of the year. And this will be hosted in Australia. But the idea is that although this is a local conference and it's kind of a local community that we're working with, everything we're doing is made fully available, and it will be able to be transplanted into different communities to help them solve their kind of governance issues. And so just as a very brief overview of what we're doing, we've just completed our first month's experiment where we collectively defined a set of values that we are embedding into our governance documents. The next month is actually relevant to something we talked about at the very beginning of this session, which is participatory democracy. So we're going to use this same mechanism to elect the board of our charity, who can then represent our interests throughout the coming year. And so this will be our first prototype of using this same mechanism in a democratic setting, but I believe it can transplant across all these different use cases. And so then in the future, we'll be then processing applications to attend this festival in the same way that we could process applications or proposals to attend a conference. And then eventually, once we actually run this festival, we'll be using the same mechanism to retrospectively recognize and reward the contributions that people provided, not just the ones that were selected, but also the spontaneous contributions that people just provide out of the goodness of their own hearts at the time. And so that's, yeah, very, very high level overview of what we're doing. Here's some channels to get involved, but I think I've put most of that. I think there's a link tree in the document that I've shared. And yeah, so our goal today is this hackathon, and we're basically going to take the same model and we're going to apply it to some generic contributions that have contributed towards this SIPS online conference. But before we kick into that, I guess perhaps maybe it might be a good time for some questions and answers if there's anything that's unclear about what I've just said or kind of what the process will be for today. Any questions? Okay, maybe not. Was that clear? Did that make sense? Is anyone still there?
Yeah, I'm just processing still.
Yeah, I'm pretty impressed by the degree of elaboration and details, although I don't understand everything so quickly. Yeah, but it's amazing what you're doing.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to go into details if there was parts that wasn't clear. That was probably, yeah, it was a bit of a whirlwind tour. Like the idea with the prototype that we'll do today is that it takes us through the stages. And so maybe that will clarify things. I suppose I could share that next. But yeah, if in the meantime, I'll just get that up. If anyone does have any questions that they want to ask, just shout out. Or type them in the box. That's also good. Okay, so this is the prototype. It's a spreadsheet. It's pretty clunky. It's as best as we could make it, but this is why we're building an app to make it much more user-friendly. There's several tabs along the bottom. That's the first thing you'll see. The first tab is an instructions for how to complete it, but I'll basically walk you through that now anyway. So the idea is, firstly, we type a name in here. We assign ourselves a username. We're operating under what we're calling a covenant, which is basically a set of, it just describes our mission and purpose at OM, what we're doing, and then also our behavioral expectations. So it's basically just explaining that we're entering into a collective experiment. And it also references our terms and conditions, which is speaking about what we do with this data. So everyone should be aware that any data you put in here is publicly available. So, and we will be sharing it, in line with best open scientific practices. But you can, of course, use a pseudonym. So if you prefer not to be identified, you can just type any kind of a pseudonym there, and then people won't know who it actually was that completed this. So the stages of the model are, well, in order. Normally we would select dimensions. I've made some a priori decisions with this prototype just to kind of ease the flow and jump straight into the interesting part, which is the valuation. And it's based on the learnings from the other prototypes, which is that it's really useful to have a dimension that's related to the mission. So I'm not sure if people have read the SIPS mission statement, but we do have a mission statement here. And so this is it. I'll just read it out for everyone's benefit. So SIPS aims to bring together scholars working to improve methods and practices in psychological science. Anyone interested in improving psychological science is welcome to join, regardless of experience. SIPS is a service organization aiming to make psychological science high quality and more cumulative by pursuing activities including improving the training and research practices, improving institutional policies and norms, conducting empirical tests of the current state and reforms, and conducting outreach within and outside psychology to achieve a broad, diverse, and inclusive community working on improving cultural and personal research practices. So there's more to it, but that's the basic essence of what the mission is. And I read that out because we're going to be rating these contributions with respect to that mission. So it's good to know first of all, what is the criteria that we're rating these things on? Secondly, the second stage of the process is to nominate contributions. And I've also made some top-down decisions here. We can totally change this if people like. What I've done to populate this list of contributions is basically gone through our other 5 main prototypes, and I've selected the kinds of categories of contributions that people have nominated for past contributions in similar settings. So typically live or online conferences like this. And so I've written out very brief descriptions of some of the contributions. So just to go through those in order. So there's a contributor, there's a title and a description and a duration. And so for this first one, it's just a generic representation of one of the organizers who spent 1 hour planning SIPS. And the description is just that they've done an hour of administration work in preparation for the event. The second contribution is by any SIPS attendee who has presented a workshop, unconference, or hackathon of 90 minutes duration. The third contribution is by the keynote panel. So this is the 90-minute keynote panel. There's 1 per day at the end of the day. The fourth contribution is a lightning talk of 10 minutes duration. The fifth is like a generic sponsorship or donation towards the event. So I'll just put $100, a $100 contribution made by a financial sponsor towards conference costs. The next one down is a $50 registration fee. So this was just one of the registration fees I pulled from the schedule. And this is the amount that a faculty or professional non-member would pay. The seventh contribution is the host for a lightning talk session. So this would be the person who did this sort of audiovisual check, introduced the speakers, invited questions at the end of each talk, and then closed the session. And then the last one is recognizing this prototype itself. And this isn't for any kind of self-serving purpose. This is to demonstrate the concept that we can not only recognize primary contributions, but also system improvements and upgrades. So if we find a value for this prototype, then it's showing that people that add value to this system and improve it over time can also be recognized and rewarded for their efforts. So these are 8 contributions that I'm proposing we could collectively value through this pairwise valuation process. But I want to invite any reflections on those ones that I've pre-populated, recognizing that this is like it's fairly top down the way that I've done it. Normally this process would be nominated by the people themselves, but I've learned through these workshops, we don't have a lot of time. And if we go through the entire process of nominating contributions, then it can be pretty chaotic. And there's a lot of like time spent just shaping contributions into a suitable format. But what I'd love to hear is if people feel like this captures the kind of range of contributions to SIPS Online, because if there's something that's critical that's missing, we could take one of these out and replace it with some other contribution that we haven't really recognized in this set here. So yeah, does anyone have any reflections on this set of contributions? Do we feel that this represents the kind of contributions that have gone into SIPS Online? Any thoughts on that? Okay, well, I guess I'll take silence as good news. We had some introductions at the beginning, but I see that more people have joined now. So if anyone would like to introduce themselves, it'd be great to hear where you're from and what brought you to this session and perhaps your interests in SIPS more generally. Okay, well, I guess we can move on to the valuation phase then. So this is the basic, this is the core of what we're doing. So the main idea is that we are using this pairwise comparison process to compare different contributions on the dimension of interest. So in theory, this could be multidimensional. For this, just to make it a really quick and easy process, I've just reduced it down to one dimension, and that is just the value to the SIPS mission. So I read that out before. I can drop that in the chat as well for people to read if they want a more clear idea of what that is. Yeah, but the basic idea is that once you've gone into this page here, thanks, Michael. Let me just drop you down there, if that's okay. So I think this one is to say select for our spreadsheet to work. I'll just hide that. So yeah, once you've entered your name here, then when we go to this valuation tab, your name will be here in the drop-down box. So you can select your name, and then you can read through both of these contributions and choose which you think is more valuable to the mission. So in this case, I would be deciding whether I think a $100 contribution or a lightning talk of 10 minutes duration is more valuable to the mission. And so I might say that I thought the lightning talk was more valuable. And then, yeah, I would just move down to the next one and then do whatever the next available comparison is. And so what you'll see is every time you're doing this, you're receiving 1 point. And so this point is reflecting the value of that contribution of this comparison to the community. And as I said at the beginning, we use these points to scale the relative value of all contributions. So once we've gone through this page and completed all of these reviews, there's a total of 56. Then we can move on to the next phase, which is this meta-valuation process I described at the beginning, where we're basically pegging the relative value of all of these contributions to these standard units. And then if we get through that in time, we can, I'll take you through the final stage, which is automated in theory, but it's basically converting these votes that all of the contributions received into normalized scores for the entire set of contributions. Okay, so I'm going to share the link just in case people haven't seen it yet. So I've just shared the prototype link. I can see that Michael's in there already. Thank you, Michael. But yeah, for everybody else, the first page to jump into would be the instructions. Feel free to read through that. Or if what I've said makes sense, you can just jump into the reviewer page and you can put your name there. And then the next page that's most important is the valuation page. And so as Michael's started doing, you can start doing comparisons. Are there any questions? Okay, well, I might just start completing this myself. It doesn't, yeah, it looks like we've got a couple of people in here. If you're struggling to find the sheet or not really clear on what's happening or what you're what we're doing, let me know. Happy to go through any part that's been confusing. But yeah, I guess I'll just start doing some comparisons myself. Okay, well, I could continue and complete the entire thing myself, but I've, to be honest, done a million of these things, and it's not really valuable to me to hear what I think. What is valuable is hearing what all of you think, and that is the idea. So if anyone's interested, jump in and do it. If not, yeah, let me know if any questions or anything. Very dark in here. For anyone just joining, well, the intention is to go through this prototype. Oh, it's okay. Thank you, Veronica. Thanks for saying. Yeah, so the intention of what we're doing, just to sort of recap, is there's a link in the chat that says prototype. And what we're doing in that prototype is basically going through pairs of contributions and comparing them on their importance to the SIPS mission. And our goal is to basically create a relative valuation of all these different contributions through this system that we're developing. That's the intention. I'm not seeing a lot of engagement. I've seen one response by Michael. Thank you for that. And I started filling some out, but I realized there's not a lot of point in me filling this out myself. So yeah, if people are curious, they don't understand, I can go back through some of the motivation for the project, what it is that we're doing. Or if we don't really want to do this, then we can just close the session early, and that's all good too. Okay, well, I think I'm going to assume that everybody's kind of off doing other things and not so interested in filling out the prototype. So I think maybe we can just close the session and move on to other things.
Yeah, sorry for you that participation is low, but really appreciate what you're doing. Thanks for giving a session.
Thanks, Michael. Appreciate that. Yeah, it's all good. It's a participatory system, and if people don't want to participate, that's fine.
Yeah. Yeah, good luck with the project.
Thank you. I'll close with this just because oh, maybe I'll just drop it in the channel. Yeah, just sort of as a window, we're hosting these monthly prototyping sessions where we're basically doing this with our community that are distributed around the world. And so there's various kind of opportunities to connect, but yeah, I'll drop it all in the chat. Thanks, everybody. Have a good day.
Thank you. Bye.